immediately, a U.S. plane goes too close to Chinese waters and has to land. 9/11. I remember it quite vividly, and it was such a surreal day because it just seemed so normal and uneventful, and well, kind of lousy like most days. I remember I had gotten up at sometime around 9 o'clock, 9 to 10, and I heard in the news something about a plane crash in the World Trade Center. Again, since I'm sort of a history geek, immediately what flashed to mind was the old plane crash in the Empire State Building back in 1937. 1937. It was around that time. When the second plane hit, that's when my mother especially, she'd start freaking out. She said basically, we're at war. We're definitely at war. This is a hostile action. Pretty unmistakable. So I saw the whole thing unfold. When the towers imploded, my mother was really scared because, she thought, whoa, there's probably a nuke in one of those planes. I mean, anything was possible at that time. Anything was possible. That was a really strange, surreal couple moments. Two 2001 generally wasn't a very pleasant year at all. Later on, after that, there's all these... Well, there's the DC sniper thing that happened shortly afterwards. Before. And then there is all these missing children. Missing or dead children. Andrea Yates. A few other women drowning their children. And then there was the strange case of Gary Condit and Chandra Levy. There's all kinds of strange things going on there. Who knows? And let's not forget the mass murderer and con artist Nikolai Soltys. Murdered his whole family because he didn't want them to start telling everyone that he's a fraud and everything. So yes, 2001 was not particularly pleasant. from 2001 were generally very unpleasant for me. I didn't like school. I mean, that's kind of obvious. And they're just, I don't know, things just simply started seeming a bit pointless. I mean, I guess it was coming down from the high that I got back from graduating middle school, but somehow I kind of knew that things weren't going to be as peachy as I thought they would. Eventually, because of the problems concerning high school, by the next semester, October 2001, my parents enrolled me in a cyber school. Now, at first it seemed kind of unpleasant because I was always used to the teachers' compliments. I loved getting compliments from the teachers. They always thought I was one of the better students since middle school yet. Especially that last year. That last year, I really put effort and strength into everything. Well, eventually, by 2002, I was quickly regarded as pretty much an honor student at this cyber school. They even brought me to a class trip. The principal there and one of the psychologists, they liked me a lot. I think she was a psychologist or guidance counselor, but they liked me a lot. They brought me to a trip in Hershey Park. On the way to that trip, I got to see Lancaster. I got to see the fields, and yes, I was living in Philly at that time. And it was such an experience for me because, you know, seeing fields of grains and corns as far as the eye could see, and I came from this urban environment where everything was scrunched together in these tight corridors, bricks and mortar and all this, you know, and row homes. It was quite an experience. You know, I like Lancaster, and Lancaster, in a way, Lancaster kind of reminds me of my place of my ancestors' origin back in Ukraine. The steppes and everything. Kind of like the rest of Pennsylvania in general. I couldn't imagine what the Poconos are like. That would be nice. And that was kind of and this was during the preparations for my family moving in general. As my parents were planning on moving. 2003, that's when everything was packed away. We were ready to depart. At this point, the war in Iraq was in full force. And by this time, I started having this is when I started having my first questions about everything. I was fully in favor of Afghanistan. It made sense. You know, but then the Iraq thing started making us scratch our heads. Iraq seemed like a waste of time, frankly, especially since Iraq is mainly a secular country. Both Iraq and Syria are secular. They're Baathists, which is basically, well, they're basically fascists. You know, of Iraq, Syria, all of Mesopotamia practically, except for Lebanon. They're sort of what you could call Mussolini-type style fascists. And some even bordering on Strasserism, like the SSNP. Strasserism, National Bolshevism. I was obsessed with all that stuff throughout 2001, by the way. And I never even heard those terms before. I have a tendency throughout my whole life to go where most men fear to tread. Either way, my questions about Iraq was what eventually led me to switch my political sentiment somewhat. I was still socially conservative, but I decided to back Dean. And of course, Dean's really disappointed me ever since he became DNC chairman. So, probably was for the better. I really thought he would reform the party and make it more pure the way it was back in the Roosevelt era. Now I know that the Roosevelt era wasn't so pure. In fact, if anything, the whole thing was a swindle. I'm not a Democrat anymore. Actually, it was a very brief infatuation. Just 1 year. 2004. 2003, 2004. They disappointed me every other year. Especially the local government here, which is predominantly Democrat, but and corrupt as is it shucks.